Good morning. We're convening a meeting of the New York State Independent Redistricting Commission. My name is Commissioner Keith Wofford. We have a few items on our agenda today. Let me start quickly with a housekeeping matter, which is at our last meeting, we had said we would gather quickly just to introduce our new committee members and keep matters going. Wanted to just confirm that our next meeting, which I think will have some additional substantive items, will be occurring, I believe we'd said the 28th of October, that last week. I don't know, did we have?
I don't know if we said that, right? I thought we only said we were going to have this meeting, which we had to reschedule because of Commissioner Frazier's the passing of her mother. I mean, I think one question in terms of scheduling a new date is what we agreed to with regards to staff. So maybe we should just set the date after we establish in terms of staff what we're going to do.
Okay, that's fine. I think that's fair that we should take it up. But again, we wanted to follow on the last meeting. Let's start by the most important matter of business, though, which is introducing our newest colleagues. We have, as a product of the last meeting, two new commissioners who have accepted the oaths of office and are now duly part of this body and establishing a quorum of 7 under the relevant constitutional statute. First, and without prejudice to any appointees, first of the two is Professor Ivelisse Cuevas Molina. Professor Cuevas Molina has joined us and is now a duly appointed and accepted member of the commission. And additionally, we have Commissioner Ross Brady. Both of them have extensive backgrounds, and we welcome their service and their contributions to come to our commission. Thank you for your service and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to be here among good company.
Second, we had been discussing at length the funding of the commission because obviously we have a lot of work to do. The census is moving along apace, and our stock and trade here is to draw district lines, or at least propose district lines and a plan for such for state and federal legislative districts. But to get to that work, we obviously have to have funding. Again, the commissioners prior to the new commissioners joining have had some lengthy discussions about this, and we believe that with respect to the $1 million that has been appropriated by the state legislature in the current fiscal year's budget, there have been some developments potentially around releasing that funding. And I would like to ask respectfully Commissioner Frazier for an update to the extent she knows about the status of that, and we can figure out how to move forward with respect to that and the rest of our work. Commissioner Frazier?
Okay, I was advised by the budget director's office, Mr. Mojica's office, that funding had been released. So I thought, that was good news. And then in my excitement, neglected to ask him to what state agency. I presume that it's the Department of State, in which the funds were initially appropriated. So our next step, I gather, is to approach the Department of State and our liaison at the Department of State to have a direct conversation about how quickly we can begin to process claims against those funds for essential items. And we probably ought to start that process by making our list, because that's how it's always done. There's always a request somewhere in a pipeline. So if we start the pipeline to create our own list, we can then approach, or should immediately approach, the Department of State to say, here we are, let's get rolling, and find out what their procedures are. Because this is an unusual situation for them. And we need to understand what the rules are so we don't start out by violating some unknown, mysterious public finance rule. There?
Good news.
Okay.
Very good news. Very good news. So I think there are two parts of that process. One is obviously whatever we might do as commissioners to get that information dialogue move forward. But also, I think it's fair to say that the statute contemplates executive directors both assembling a staff and putting together a budget. So, I mean, I don't know what the thoughts are, but I'd like to open up to the group to discuss the executive director process. There is a clock, I think, that's been referred to in the past under the statute of 45 days to put those executive directors in place. And I think that would aid in our efforts to actually get the money moved where it needs to be to accomplish the task at hand. So I think that would be part of the next phase. I don't know if other commissioners have views on that.
Well, if I can just add a moment, obviously the statute provides that the two co-executive directors are responsible for putting together the staffing plan for the commission, and that it's subject to our review. I don't know that the statute is totally clear about whether or not we have the ability to disapprove, but at the same time we have the ability to review that staffing plan. But clearly the two co-executive directors be the ones that have to be putting that plan together. And so I would concur that it's imperative that we move forward expeditiously. Two executive co-directors are put in place. We have identified our candidate where we would put forward for consideration, and we would hope that the other co-executive director would be in place at least we can move forward. Those two people, I think, would be the individuals that would be or should be responsible contacting the Department of State as it relates to the procedures of going forward to fund the staffing plan that they're proposing. So with that, just hopefully we can keep this thing moving forward and get those executive directors in place.
Well, if you don't mind, I have some familiarity with budget process and budget speak. I'd be more than happy to volunteer to get that process up and running, if you don't mind, because this is something I used to do, sun up, sun down. So
I personally have no objection to Commissioner Frazier moving this process forward and gathering information. And
me neither.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful, Commissioner, if you could begin that process.
Thank you.
if everybody agrees, I can tell you what the landscape is. I'll be sending requests and for information from you, asking for your feedback, because quite frankly, I don't think this works unless we do it as a consensus document. In short, we don't have to fight. I just need to know what the ideas are. They all get dumped on a piece of paper. We do the calculus, or basically the straight up mathematics, and send it and say, look, what does it look like? What does it accomplish? And take it as just a plain old ordinary budget development exercise that can be done, by the way, in record time, so that we can cover some of the laps that all of this process has cost us. And like I said, I'd be more than happy to do it because it used to be my bread and butter.
Well, Elaine, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your efforts. Again, it begs the question about our co-executive directors. I mean, you know, in all due respect, and to you, you're not the co-executive director.
That's right, I'm not.
You shouldn't be called upon to have to do all that work. So while we appreciate your effort, then again, the statute's pretty clear that we need those two co-executive directors in place in order to put together the staffing plan for the commission.
I assume Commissioner Frazier was volunteering on an interim basis until we get use all the help we can to move this process forward expeditiously.
Yeah, my understanding was that they would be going in parallel. We'd be both doing executive directors, and Commissioner Frazier would be starting, because I agree that we should get this ball rolling as we continue this process.
I've done my best work under an interim title. It's not an issue for me, gentlemen. This just needs to get done, okay? This needs to get done. And if it requires the anointing of interim, executive director, anoint, and let's get going. And I know I can't anoint anyone on y'all's side of the equation, but let's just get it going. If my colleagues can accept my role as interim, whatever, to get this going, then I'll be more than happy to perform in that role as an interim executive director. Let me know.
I guess I would be somewhat uncomfortable with any title other than commissioner for any of us. I do think that it would be very valuable if you could go forward, Elaine, and develop the contact information that we need moving forward. It's a very valuable. You bring that to the commission. It's a great thing. I am, however, echoing George's point that we need to move as expeditiously as possible to name our executive directors and to reiterate that the four of us or five of us have identified a candidate. We would hope that another candidate would be identified shortly, because under the provisions of the Constitution, we really it demands that a process happen that includes co-executive directors in the lead. I think that, however, if you, Elaine, because you have this vast experience, could reach out to budget or state or both and develop an understanding of the contact and the way, and perhaps a way that we could start to move the money, that would allow us at the very least to be able to fund those executive director positions. Additionally, I think one of the things that we need to move forward on is compensation for those executive directors. I'm not sure that the discussion of that is necessarily a public one. That may be an executive session situation because we'd be talking about compensation for individuals. I'm not the lawyer here, so you guys can argue over that because many of them are. I do think, however, that would be very next thing on our checklist is to decide compensation, take advantage of Elaine's expertise and experience in terms of developing the contact, and move forward with this co-executive director appointment as expeditiously as we can.
Yeah, so good.
I've got an observation, if you don't mind my sharing. Do we have a chairman? I mean, just us. Do we have, is there a title of chairman?
There is a title of chairman, and in fact, that's the next item on the agenda. You know, I would suggest, and someone can make a formal motion if they agree, that since I think it would be fair for us to discuss, since the executive director is the only named person in the statute from the staff side, that it might be appropriate and helpful to discuss what we might be thinking about compensation, because I think it's unfair to the extent that our colleagues from the majority appointees, don't have any guidance necessarily, may not have guidance or thoughts on the compensation potentially for such a person. It may be more difficult for them to identify that person timely. So I would suggest that because that's a compensation issue and because the appointment of a chair is a selection issue, those both under the open meetings law, I believe would be potential appropriate executive session issues, that if there's a motion in agreement to that we move briefly to executive session. With the one caveat is technically, I have no idea whether the person behind the veil here can do that. But I would suggest for those two limited items, we move to a brief executive session. Is there a motion?
I would so move.
Second.
All in favor of executive session with respect to the two items, compensation of executive director and appointment of a chair?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's approved that we move to executive session. We're back in open session of the Independent Redistricting Commission. During executive session, the commissioners reached an outcome with respect to the proposed compensation for the co-executive directors And that conclusion was that they should be compensated at a salary of $145,000 per year. Further, the commissioners unanimously agreed that at our next meeting, we would endeavor to put forward co-executive directors for a vote. Further, we would endeavor to elect a chair of the commission, as the chair is contemplated by the constitutional amendment and statute. And third, we have a remaining matter of business of actually setting when that next meeting occurs. We, as we all know, have a continuing clock under the statute. So with that, if there is no further commentary on executive session or otherwise from my fellow commissioners, I would open it up to discuss scheduling for our next meeting.
So, thank you, Commissioner. I think in looking at the calendar, the clock expires the weekend of November 14th, correct? So I would propose, in keeping with our Wednesday meetings, I would propose November 11th to maximize time to identify an executive director. Having established a salary, it will be helpful for, at least on our side, to have the time to be able to identify someone.
I agree with that.
What is the date of the expiration of the 45-day clock? I want to make sure we don't.
It's the
blow it
14th or the 15th.
What was the start date of the 45 days? I believe we selected our commissioners and got a quorum of 7 at our last meeting, right? What date was that?
Yeah.
September 30th.
September 30th. Okay.
And just, I would point out that November 11th is Veterans Day. Not sure that that's the wisest choice.
We want to move it up one day, Tuesday.
Yeah, the 10th.
Is Tuesday okay for Professor Davis?
I
yeah,
wouldn't
that's
be
right.
able
No,
to
it
attend.
can't.
I'm not able to attend on the 10th.
You
Sorry?
can't do the 10th.
I can't do
How
the
about,
Okay, what about the 12th?
So I guess
The
the question
11th, what's,
is there any reason we're waiting to the last possible day? Let me say-
to make sure we've aligned the work to be done.
so yeah, how about the 12th?
Yes.
Well, it's day after election day. I'd be willing to do 2 days after election day, George.
The 12th is, I'm
Yeah.
free.
I agree, the 12th is good.
Yeah, the 12th,
Tuesday the 12th.
Thursday
Oh,
the
is
12th.
that a
Thursday.
Thursday?
Oh,
Hold on.
Thursday, November 12th. Okay.
That day would work for me, no earlier than 11.
11 on the 12th then?
Good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that works. Would we, we're missing Commissioner Martins though. Could we ask the minority appointees to contact him just to make sure that works on his end?
I don't know that we can get him if he's in
Yeah.
court.
Yeah, well, look, I think we can calendar it. And I would suggest that if that comes up as an issue or a problem, that we would correspond by email with respect to a mutually available date and find an alternative date within the 45-day window.
That makes sense.
I agree with that.
Oh, hopefully it works for Jack, and if not, we'll
Hopefully.
work it out.
Fair.
Okay.
So-
Do we, I forget, do we need a formal motion on the meeting date?
I move. we
So
adjourn.
move.
I think so,
yeah.
in the absence
Well,
of.
so
chair,
move for the
probably-
meeting date. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
yeah. So
moved.
move for the meeting date on November 12th at 11 a.m.
I second.
Here,
All in favor of establishing our next meeting for 11 a.m. on Thursday, November 12th?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The vote is unanimous.
And thanks to Elaine for offering to talk to the Department of State, get us some preliminary information.
Right. If there be no other business, I would move to adjourn.
I second that.
All in favor of adjournment to our next meeting?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much, everyone, and
Thank
thank you
you.
for your support, staff.
Thank you,
Have a good day.
commissioners.
Thank you.